Welcome to the bonus episode with Shaina Horrell. That's how you pronounce your last name? I just made that up.
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. Horrell, Horrell, either
Horrell
way,
makes
doesn't
more
matter.
sense. I really wanted you to have an accent there, some flair. Horrell also makes sense. And Shaina is a 4'6". I don't even remember what the rest of you are. Four,
Me
six.
either.
You don't either. And what's fascinating to me, the 4'6" profiles in human design, you're here for experience. You're a generator. And you learn through experience. So homework, we don't really need to give this child homework. How did you feel about homework growing up?
Hated it. Felt like a waste of time.
Waste of time. Were you a good girl
Yeah.
and did you complete it?
Well, I mean, back in the day, Cliff Notes was like my favorite website. So if it was a book report, I was reading the Cliff Notes and then getting very innovative in my approach to things.
Mm.
But I am a rule follower if I agree with the rule. But if I think it's a stupid rule, then I'm going to challenge the rule.
Mm. And that's what makes your four-line personality so important because you are the people. You're the voice of the people. We do need, I guess, people to follow some type of rule that, like, murder is a good example. We shouldn't do that.
No.
Um, but we also, I'm a heretic, I'm a fifth line. If I see a rule that's stupid, I need someone like you to agree with me. And I also need the sixth line. There's 6 lines in these hexagrams to say, yes, this woman is wise. And you're both, you're the 4 and you're the 6. So people believe you. And I'm just curious, do you experience life where people just think you're wise, or have you run into some people that are a pain in the ass?
Both. But what I do find is a lot of times people will just start talking to me, and next thing you know their entire life story, and they're asking me like what my thoughts are.
Mm.
And I love it. It's like my favorite thing ever because I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy hearing their stories, but for some reason they just feel comfortable sharing things with me. So that's always fun.
Yeah, you have trait 13 and it's activated as we speak. This is the week for storytellers. You might notice that people are more inclined this entire week to tell you their life story.
I legitimately had a call today and was like, oh, let me call this person back between my 16 other calls, thinking it would be super quick. The next thing I knew their entire life story, which is great because it's really helped with context setting and things like that. Um, but yeah, I definitely have noticed that today, not
Yeah.
knowing that, but it makes so much sense now.
So you're a good secret keeper, and you also know the power of telling a good story at the right time.
Mm.
Yeah. And what's interesting as a 4-6 is some 4-6s hate that. Some of you guys are annoyed about having to hear stories. Does it feel heavy for you?
Um, I don't often feel annoyed about it. There are some times where I'm like, ooh, like I only have 2 minutes, and like
Mm.
that I always have the guilt about because I don't want people to feel invalidated because I do want to hear their story in the appropriate time and setting. But sometimes I have to kind of be like, hey, I'm so sorry, like I only have a couple minutes. And hope that it's not too off-putting and revisit later. But sometimes I will do that too if I'm not in the right headspace for it because I want to make sure that I give them an authentic reaction or like have a good conversation. So sometimes setting boundaries of like, hey, I'm actually like, I got a lot going on in this moment. I'm not in the right headspace for this. Can we come back to it? Is sometimes a tool that I use. Same thing with hard conversations as well, depending on if it's your with a manager or whatever it may be, significant other, if you have one of those. So just kind of depends.
That is a very aware person because what you're saying is authentically, when your energy can be shared for others, when it can't. For me, authenticity is knowing your energy and then communicating that and how you will respond at a time when you have energy. That is that doesn't sound like a difficult conversation. That sounds like a comfortable conversation.
Well, since we're talking about stories, my favorite. So I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she's everything to me. And so she has become aware of this. And so there'll be times where I'm maybe being pulled in a couple different directions mentally, and she can like read me and be like, "Hey, I need to ask you something, but are you overstimulated right now?" And for a 10-year-old to ask her mother if she's overstimulated, it just like makes me laugh and also so proud at the same time. So I like to think that I'm hopefully, when she's in therapy down the road for many of other things, that will be one thing that I have done correctly, is to make her more emotionally aware.
I'd like to believe that therapy down the road is just, oh, your parents didn't have your human design blueprint. Let us tell you what you're here for. And it sounds like, when you are living your own aligned energy, it also means that you create room for others to live their own aligned energy. It's not, I can't take on the burden of your story. You're here to actually collect stories. What's going to be great about you is that people are going to come to hear all the best stories in the world about leadership and life and motherhood. Your stories that you're collecting from people will be your TED Talk, only hopefully it'll be an owl talk. I don't know, just throwing it out there. I think Ted's had his day. Less opinions, more stimulating conversations. So as an authentic leader, what words of wisdom do you have?
Oh man, how much time do we have? I think first and foremost is to be your authentic self. I heard somewhere early in my career when I worked for, I don't know if I can mention the name of the companies, but it's a famous company that does makes yoga pants.
You can say whatever you want.
Oh, great. So Lululemon, but it was one of the things that we talked about was fire your representative, and your representative is the person that you take on first dates, on job interviews, all of that. And for me, my biggest piece of advice to people as I'm working with them in my new business is to fire your representative and be your authentic self. Now, granted, some of us need a little bit of coaching on that authenticity and to making sure that we're showing up with impact and have a presence. So let's not negate that. But also, as you are going for job interviews or meeting people for the first time, nothing is worse than like coming to find out later that it's actually they sent somebody else, like they sent their representative, and then you hire them or you go into business with them and then there's somebody else. And so at the end of the day, for me, I'm not for everybody, but you will know that I am my authentic self, and you will know how I communicate and how I show up for people.
Yeah, you're an emotional being. And for the half of us that are not, it doesn't mean we don't have emotions. It just means that we're amplifying the room around us. It means that you have this strong ability to dictate how people feel in a room, which is important because you know that about yourself. Authenticity is knowing thyself. I think sometimes the reason we send representatives is because we still haven't fully fleshed out who are we and who are we told that we need to be. So many people are trying to be their best selves, which to me sounds like they don't know who they are. And they're trying to find this version in a book or this version in a 7 habits of highly effective people. What journey did you go on to find yourself? Because you're very in tune with, I feel these emotions, and people need to know when I'm available and when I'm not. Like, how do you develop that awareness?
Well, I'm going to go with my most unpopular opinion first because it's the most controversial and my favorite, and that's TikTok. My manager, I'll be like, I read this thing. She's like, you read it on TikTok. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That came from TikTok. But my algorithm
line, you people, you're like, you decide who are the people that we believe. And you just like, this is why women in America of a particular demographic are great at MLMs. I'm not on the tactic. So you got educated on TikTok by a 6 line.
I love some TikTok every evening. 10:15 to 11:15 is my scroll time, and I save things to files to come back to later. So there's a file for later, there's a file for therapy, there's a file for rising momentum, which is my business. So I have files for everything, and then I can go back to it. But I would say TikTok's been a big part of my awareness journey. I would say reading books, and by reading I mean listening to. I'm an Audible person. I'm dyslexic, so listening to Audible, and super efficient as well. So I love my commute so very much, but it does, or walking my dogs, then I get to listen to books. And Brene Brown is one of my favorites. But and then therapy. I mean, I make the joke about therapy, but I think everybody should see a therapist at some point in their life, if not, ongoing, whatever that may be. But yeah, I kind of find little bits and everywhere. And then I also try to be just super aware and take lessons out of all of my experiences. And I think I learn most from watching really terrible leaders make really bad mistakes. I make mistakes too, but I think I learn most from them, especially when they negatively impact me, and in the fact of like, that's what I never want to show up as, and I never want to make anybody feel that way. And so then I take that and I flip it on how to then show up for other people to ensure that that is not the brand that I portray.
Hmm. Yeah, if we could just say that louder for our 4-6s, experiencing terrible leaders is where you pick up your gold.
Yep. So many,
How do
so
you
many
how do you
nuggets.
ride your wave of that experience? What has allowed you to surf better so that you're not overwhelmed by the negative emotions that come from that?
Um, Processing and talking with my like trusted group of friends, and then also being vulnerable. So I have my day job, and then I have my side business, which is Rising Momentum. But in my day job, I'm very vulnerable with people, in terms of my experiences and what I'm going through. And if I'm not showing up in a way, my team also, we hold each other really accountable to what's going on. And so we kind of share those experiences. And I think the more that we share them in a safe space and talk through them, the more we process it and process it out loud. I'm a huge processor. Sometimes I feel like it takes me a little bit more time than others, but it's because I feel things extremely deeply. And so I think just kind of sitting with it, and sometimes you need to sit in the mud and feel it and be upset by it, and sometimes just really ticked off, and then set a timer for disappointment. So crappy things are going to happen. You're going to have really crappy interactions with people, but letting that dictate the rest of your day, is something that I refuse to do. So really setting that timer for disappointment to process through that, and sharing my experiences too with more junior talent, I guess, because they're all going to go through it at some point. And if they can learn anything from my experience, hopefully it'll help them process faster.
I love that you mentioned Brene Brown because we are all researchers, storytellers. And what you've just described as being a researcher and a storyteller and leading with vulnerability. And that is why the 4 line and the 6 line really are so important. Your energy, you also have this beautiful tribal rave, like you have a pulse on what the tribe needs. You're
Mm.
always looking out for the tribe and the security of the tribe. That is the gift of this emotional wave that you have. And so when you're in the lows and you're in the highs and you're deeply feeling, you're really just allowing yourself to feel what is for the greater tribal good, which of course is always security. I'm over here with my individual energy trying to poke at the tribe and tell them that their security is all false. And what's so fun about your energy is that you also have this 1057, this intuition, this clarity that is very individuated. It is here to be mutating people in a way that allows them to be, and you're here to be self-empowered and empower others along the way.
Yeah, sometimes it gets me into trouble though, because I help people find their voice and speak up and ask for things. So sometimes it gets me into a little bit of trouble of like, you're empowering people too much. So harnessing that for,
Mm.
you know, everybody's
I like
good.
to
But
remind people that when they see self-empowerment, they try to be it. We always have that
mhm.
phrase, if you can't see it, you be it. Well, I say you should just be it if you can't see it. But what you're here to do with the 1057, the owners of this strength, is to be self-empowered naturally. Whether that is self-empowered as a janitor or self-empowered in the C-suite, you're just here to show people what it looks like to be self-empowered. And that natural being is just being yourself, right? And getting paid for it.
Yes.
Mm. This our bonus episode here for our 4-6 still listening. You are here to experience. You're here for experiences. And I think the other thing that she said was, setting a timer for disappointment and then sharing and being vulnerable. And what's so important for the 4-6 is to know that every experience is for your learning.
Mm-hmm.
Every experience is so that you can feel into who is right for you, who's not right for you. And what I like to remind the 4 line is every single person, including that person that you hate at work, the right person for you in the right environment. Prison is an environment, and perhaps if you were cellmates, y'all get along. All I'm saying is you don't have to, that there is, you know, that there are people in this current environment that you're living in that are right for you. And there are people in this current environment that are not right for you. And, you know, never take one date. You got to have a few in different environments to know if they're right for you, particularly with that emotional wave. To hear more about how Shaina is momentum rising, head over to the main episode. And where can people follow you on LinkedIn?
They can follow me by looking up Shaina Horrell. We also have, you can contact us through our Rising Momentum website. So it's Rising Momentum LLC .com, and you can fill out the contact form. And then we also have an Instagram page that is linked from there, and my bio is linked somewhere on the website as well.
Excellent. One more thing I'll point out as a 4-6, because if I had $1 for every time I met a 4-6 that said that they had dyslexia, I would have a nice little foundation fund for dyslexia. You are so here for experience. And I love that you vulnerably shared that, because I know that it is several of my profiles that are just like you that also struggle with the shame that can come from that.
That's a whole podcast episode on itself.
Stay tuned for future hanging out with Katie and Shaina.